usual bird, she couldn't believe what she uncovered. How much trouble can an owl cause? It's a regular day at the office for Officer Becky until she receives a call that a baby owl was obstructing traffic. Compared to the kind of calls she normally received, this was quite unusual. Soon enough, she arrives at the scene and she's clueless as to what exactly to do to help the situation. She's heard about owls and she knows that they are wild birds that barely tolerate humans or physical contact. But to her greatest surprise, as she moves closer, the adorable creature is neither scared nor intimidated. In fact, it begins to hop towards her in a somewhat friendly manner. What's strange is that when she tries to move it away from traffic, it does not budge. "Where'd you come from, little guy?" she asked rhetorically. By now, the traffic was building up, and a man close to the officer volunteers to detour the drivers towards a nearby alternative route. Together, they were able to keep the traffic situation under control till they could figure out what exactly the bird was up to. It takes the officer a while to notice, but there is a metal pendant attached to the bird's leg, and when she tries to take a closer look at the object, the owl that was friendly some seconds ago pecked at her hand. It was at this moment that Officer Becky knew she couldn't handle this on her own. She immediately dials her friend, Dr. Kell, a local wildlife expert. "Hey Kell, I have an owl situation here, and it's quite odd. Please come help me check it out." When he arrives at the scene, he's surprised at how a tiny owl could pose such a big problem. He moves closer and strokes the baby owl, and it seems somewhat pleased with the gesture. When he notices the gem in the metal pendant, Dr. Kell could not help but marvel. "This is a hiker's pendant. They use it to mark their journeys," he exclaimed. But it didn't make any sense to Officer Becky. Why would an owl have a hiker's jewel? Then it struck her. There was a missing hiker report on her desk this morning. His name was Brian. Could it have anything to do with this bird? Is there any chance that the owl encountered the missing man? It all came together when Sarah looked closely at a picture of the missing man. There it was, the same jewel tied to the owl. And so they set out, guided not just by a map, but by the hoots and the flapping of the baby owl. As they journeyed on into the forest, Dr. Kell and Officer Becky found more reasons to trust this tiny creature leading the way. It was almost as though it knew every tree, every turn. Soon enough, they arrive at a campsite, but they find no one there. It looked like it had been abandoned. Dr. Kell and the officer glance at each other knowingly. Was this Brian's campsite? Dr. Kell finds a diary lying on the floor, and when they examine it, it contains several escapades, but the latest spoke of how the writer encountered a two-legged friend that somehow fit the description of the owl on Officer Becky's shoulder. In that same diary, Brian explained his next destination, describing the formidable sights he would visit next. And as far as the owl was ready to guide, Officer Becky and her friend were ready to go. Then suddenly the owl stops and begins circling a particular spot. It resembled a cave. Its entrance is wide open, but they are unsure of what lies inside. After a bit of contemplation, and to their surprise, they go in to find a weak, destabilized Brian. They quickly offer him water, but he's too weak to say anything. When he finally regains his strength, he speaks of his unusual friendship with the tiny owl and how they formed an odd but strong bond. This happy ending is proof that humans can't only form bonds with dogs and cats. With a little bit of compassion, any two souls can connect.